my fellow warriors, hope you're doing well, cause I'm not. And before I jump into the day that Riot decided to release an event that f***ed us all in the I have a huge disclaimer to make. I understand that many of us Noxians thirst for blood and rolling heads, but by the end of the day, we are not animals. Do not, and I repeat, do not look for Riot employees to harass on social media. Many of the employees got nothing to do with the event. Others were probably forced to do their jobs and shut the fuck up, and some are probably fighting behind closed doors. But the reason why we're probably not hearing anything about this is due to this lovely thing called an NDA, which is basically a contract that says, you talk, we sue. We don't have faces to point our fingers at, but we do have this lovely department called the management. Whatever marketing creative director that was involved in this is the sole reason why all of this happened, because they are literally the final decision makers. And as decision makers, it was their responsibility to read the lore that had been written for the past decade, which they have simply failed to do. And although COVID also played its part, the ability to read is definitely not life-threatening. 6 months ago, I was foaming at the mouth for an evil, batshit crazy simp who will bring back to life all the Shadow Isle characters and threaten to end the lives of others. But now, here I am, mad, disappointed, and hurt. The Shadow Isles has been that one spooky region every game has that people love because it just oozes edge. And with champions like 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗘𝙤𝗧𝗏, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏, and of course Thresh, it did just that. The incredible character design drew us to want to learn more, and over the years, the narrative team made our dreams come true. From stories of a long-forgotten kingdom and its mad king, to phenomenal cinematics, to game events revolving around its story, music, laments, the build-up to the Ruined King game and event was boiling in each and every one of us. We prepared ourselves for a grand story of horror, epic battles, and uncovered secrets. Prepared ourselves to learn about the long-lost kingdom, its mad king, and a maggot-ridden queen who begged to die once more. What relics were on the Blessed Isles, how 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 was planning to fight for every grass and pebble, will 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 avenge herself and her beloved? Where exactly will Thresh and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 join 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in battle besides the king? And when will 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 prepare to defeat him to find peace once more? But that never happened. At first I was excited. Then I went into denial, then I cried, and then I became very, very mad. Because over the years we were mentally preparing to learn more about the one piece of Runeterra we knew so much about, yet also nothing at all. And instead of all the paths leading that way, Riot pivoted completely and went into a direction with no 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, no 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, no 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, no 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, no 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and definitely not Thresh. Now look, the Ruined King to some didn't look exactly the way that they had imagined. But besides the Hot Topic clothing, to others he looked exactly like the toxic creepy simp Isolde ended up falling out of love with. But what both sides agreed on is that he was truly and utterly unhinged, for he was so devoted to his wife that he couldn't even part from her dying body, and executed anyone who dared to badmouth him or his diseased beloved. He locked himself up with her rotting corpse and brought her in that form to the Blessed Isles as if nothing about it was morally wrong. He was so insane and in denial that he completely disregarded it. And of course, the biggest fear of the Blessed Isle monks was that he would put a vile, rotting corpse into a water so holy and powerful that it will fuck something up. And that's exactly what it did. And although the story is absolutely incredible, it had been completely removed, losing all the impact the story carried and making it into something simplistic, boring, and generic. So what did we receive? We got cinematics, a visual novel, and a comic series. As an avid collector of Riot's comic books, they were pure gold. Amazing art, sublime storytelling, just overall pure bliss. These ain't it. Besides the art style that was a bit too cartoony for the weight of the story, the storytelling was bland and incorrect, which is quite surprising considering the fact that this was Ian St. Martin's work. Yes, the same guy who told us the truth of what really happened in Ionia on the day when Noxus invaded and gassed everyone, including themselves. But none of that complex, mature, and sophisticated writing was presented in the comic. And my only question is, why? The visual art of the game is absolutely stunning and aesthetically pleasing. But when it comes to the story, Oh boy. Not only do the characters act completely out of character, but the story itself is rushed and treated like a generic gacha game. Add some humor and lighthearted remarks and whatever I was talking about at the beginning of the video is clearly gone. Because like I said, we were preparing for a harrowing battle between good and evil, but instead received the parody of it. The first cinematic didn't show us any of the Shadow Isle squad, but it did show us several regions going into absolute chaos and bringing up questions like, will 𝗬𝘂𝗽𝗪 rise from the immortal bastion? Will Samira and Darius help defeat 𝗬𝘂𝗽𝗪? Will Poppy finally accept herself as the true hero of 𝗬𝘂𝗪cie? Will Dara find her way back to Karma? But none of it matters, because besides Dara having a crawling in my skin moment, everything's irrelevant because we'll never hear or see them in this event ever again. In the second cinematic, half of the Sentinels, the Ruin champs, Vex, and the Maiden ceased to exist. When questions started to arise as to why the fuck all of this was happening, there was only one person who kept answering our calls, and that was Mr. 𝗏. Now, 𝗏 is like our bread and butter. He's the guy you go to whenever you have a lore or a league-related question. Only during this event, I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about because he just kept contradicting himself. At first, we were told that the game and skins are all canon. Then we were told that the visual novel is the canon story, the comic is a retelling of the event through Wild Drift, and Wild Drift is a slightly different version that only includes the champions that were released into it. But when asked if everything the characters say and do is canon, since all of them have exaggerated and silly conversations, 𝗏 said no, and went on to say how canon gets interpreted differently by different people. No, it's not. Canon is canon. Gaslighting isn't cool, kids, don't do this. Now, regarding the whole vibe of the story, 𝗏 said, we are fine with the story being told in different ways, styles and expressions by different teams and products. The visual novel tells it in a more of a lighthearted way, whereas if we told that same story fully in CG form, we would probably tell it in a darker, grittier way, and that they felt they could make a great story with champions that made sense from both narrative and a champion popularity, residence angles. But then he continued, to me, that just leads to Barry's storytelling. This is just my opinion, of course. Different people like different types of story and storytelling. So I have two questions. Why tell us a parody story of an alleged CG version if we never got to see or read the CG version? And if this was his idea of better storytelling, who are these we he keeps mentioning? No, really, which one of the narrative teams was it? Who are the writers that all agreed single-handedly that this was the best decision of the century and just went along with it? Because with the writing I've seen and followed over the years, and yes, I had seen and followed it all, this is sus as fuck. There's no way St. Martin, the guy who drops 10,000-word short stories, would sit down, write a couple of graphic bubbles, and say, yes, this is it. And hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine McNeil being okay with Diana casually strolling with strangers up Mount Targon and accidentally finding the Lunari. Or Olaf, who just straight up went Ooga Booga caveman and not even recognized Lucian, who he fought side by side with in Shadow and Fortune. And what about Pantheon? You're telling me that Anthony and David were okay with the Chad who had the strongest resolve and willpower that took over an actual god falls to the hands of Jared's son and 14-year-old me? No, let's break it down. First, Atreus is being taken over by 𝗬𝘂𝗽𝗪. Then Pantheon returns and takes over Atreus. Then 𝗬𝘂𝗪 takes over Pantheon, and then Atreus breaks free of both 𝗬𝘂𝗪 and Pantheon. And by break free, I mean casually waking up and going, oops, I almost caused the war. Then we have 𝗬𝘂𝗪 taking over Karma, the spirit of the First Lands. Rengar acting like a furry comic relief and completely forgetting about Kha'Zix's existence. Miss Fortune magically knowing Gangplank survived when Illaoi never told her the truth and chooses to become him by agreeing to being ruined. Vayne. who kills anything on sight, simping this abomination and using a magical weapon. Look, I hate the bitch, but when I said I wanted her dead, I didn't mean her fucking plot. She killed her surrogate mother in cold blood without even letting her finish a sentence. And now she casually joins a team with Ranger in it? A monster? And don't even get me started on Lucian negotiating with the one who murdered his wife and stole her soul. Let me repeat that. Lucian negotiated with the being that murdered his wife and stole her soul. Like, who the fuck agreed to this? There's just no way that everyone were in on this and said, haha, yeah dude, ship it. This story has so many plot holes and inconsistencies that people on Reddit made entire lists of it. I respect the narrative writers way too much to believe that this is what they were reduced to. And if Reeve claims that this was a collective decision, I'm afraid that the world of Runeterra is doomed. Because if this is what we got for the Shadow Isles, I don't want to imagine what void geckos and water spaghetti monsters we're gonna get in the future. To say that I'm disappointed is an understatement. You ruined entire plots, characters, and regions. Besides coming out and telling us that all of this was never canon, there is no way of fixing this. And the worst part about this is that we know that you can no longer do it, because you already made your profit. And that's all that really mattered to you. I never invested all my time and money into this company for its sensational game and amazing player base. And instead of cherishing the world you created, you pissed in the bucket that me and many others were drinking from, showing us exactly how much we truly mean to you. I really hope that whoever was responsible for this will be taken care of. And I truly hope that those of you who still care about the lore community will do whatever it takes to regain our trust back. You had a management who failed you and failed us. But hopefully in the future, those of you who do care about the world of Runeterra will come through and fix this mess. Because if none of you will take action to repair all this damage that you had done, you are no different than the many studios who disregarded their player base. And if that's the route you're going for, you should probably not waste your time on an MMO.